Good evening, everyone. Mike, the GM of Shared Legends here. And tonight, I want to go through a little bit of a recap of our split party adventure from the past, the past 4 or 5 weeks. So this week was the reunion week for my weekly campaign, and the recap for that's this session this week is it's a whole different episode. It was planned to be a whole bunch of fun. Um, I knew it was going to be fun, but then it ended up being fun for a completely different reason. So my weekly campaign's been running since mid-July 2025, and we've had full attendance or only missing one player, I think, in all but 3 sessions of 38 to 40. And I know what everyone says, if you're not having attendance issues, then you're providing a good environment, a good game to your players. I'm not one to rest on my laurels, though. And as a fairly new GM, still wanting to shake things up and try new things for my players for a few weeks. So I put a poll in Discord to gauge interest in splitting the party of 6 into 2 groups of 3 for a mini arc each for each of them. And I think within about 2 to 3 hours, the results came back with 6 yeses and 0 nos. So I went about making my plan for them. We were finishing up chapter number 2 of the campaign about 3 weeks after the poll, and that was where I planned for the split. Now the plan was for each 3 player group to have 2 full sessions on alternating weeks. We didn't encounter the schedule boss with the change, so this took what worked out to be just under or right around a month. The players were presented with sort of 2 different scenarios, like completely different adventures, which I'll get into a little bit later. And then the leaders, the quote unquote leaders, rolled d20s to see who would go first. And Team Keystone Archive won and started out week 1. So, why the split if everything's running so well? In all honesty, I think I covered it already. The biggest one was an attempt at something different. I didn't want it to get stale. I didn't want it to start to feel monotonous. We'd just gone through like our typical, like we were doing milestone leveling, and we're going 5 to 6 session arcs, adventures, quests, and I just didn't want it to get stale. I didn't want it to get boring. I wanted to try something completely new. Two the they were There were 2 smaller quests and tasks of equal but different importance, and one was to advance lore in the main storyline, and one was to visit a player backstory, and ended up visiting 2 player backstories. Um, we play with a group of 6, so we spotlight control and spotlight sharing is something that I try to be mindful of, but realistically, when there's 6 people in a group of for a 3 hour session, the spotlight can move quickly, and sometimes it's um, easy to get lost in the shuffle, especially virtually over Discord with people talking over top of each other on occasions. I know I played one of the comedic moments from the reunion session for my wife, and she's like, I really couldn't follow it. You guys always sort of talk over top of each other, and it wasn't necessarily we were talking all over top of each other. I think 4 of the 7 of us could barely contain ourselves. We were laughing so hard. I was trying to DM and add little bits and pieces as 2 players were role playing, and I could barely speak. It was hilarious. Now I did have a little bit of a selfish reason for wanting to do the split. 6 players in every session is awesome, and we're able to do some pretty cool things, but it can be taxing. Um, I haven't done much DMing of small groups, and the 3 player groups were a huge breath of fresh air. Things were able to move along quickly. Um, combat wasn't as much of a slugfest because there wasn't six player characters at we're now at level 10 each round. And for the feedback I got from them, they actually felt like they had to manage their resources a lot more and they had to think a little more tactically because there was only three of them. They didn't have that extra healing word, those extra control spells. It was just three of them. And the last one that turned out part of being part of the most fun was to build suspense and create role play opportunities for the reunion. Um, they each came back with a whole bunch of stuff to share. We came back with a new face after our human warlock reincarnated as an orc warlock. Um, it was a like there was just so many amusing things. What went really well for our group was we originally sort of said like you can drop in and listen in on the sessions where your week is off, but it actually wouldn't have allowed for that suspense and those great role play opportunities. The groups didn't actually drop in at all on the sessions, and that made those big reveals when they got back together even more fun, um, and even more engaging, and like they made them special. It built closer relationships amongst the small three-man parties. Our cleric um, basically what it for forsook his deity and has turned into a infernal cleric, and the right hand of the previous deity came and decided to make his appearance, giving the other players their chance to leave because his bone to pick was with the cleric, and there wasn't even a hesitation. They all just stood in there right behind him and basically went to war with the right hand of a god. This with the smaller groups, it allowed that better engagement from the players with their backstory and lore. There's not six competing voices to talk and interact with NPCs. The six-person group is great, but there's those ones. There's in every group you try to share the spotlight, but in every group there's always a couple that step forward and are more engaged, more they talk a little bit more. They step into that leadership role. I also got practice running two separate adventures on altering weeks, and I'm going to list it as a challenge in the next one. But I've never really built my own two shot or one shot, and I ended up having to build two shots for this, which was a different challenge considering I'm used to 5 to 6 episode arcs, and the campaign we're building, I just built like we're working on chapter 3 and it's looking like it's going to be 20 to 30 sessions long with the different locations and the things, the MacGuffins and the quest items they have to find. Now on to the negatives. The players didn't love the 2 weeks between sessions. I think each of them said that their Thursday night rolled around both times when they were off, and even though they knew it wasn't their week and they'd agreed to this, they were a little bit pissed that it wasn't D&D night on Thursday. And that's not something I necessarily experienced because I was still there every week, but I can understand that. It's not something I would want to do very often, but I think it was a necessary sort of shake up and flavor. One of my other really big challenge was holding in the secrets from between the groups. There were so many cool things that happened, so many funny things, so many like gut wrenching interactions, and like again, one player character almost died. Um, Keeping it from the other groups was becoming a challenge. It was I just wanted like everyone knows as a DM, you want to let people know, like you want to let the other groups know, like what's going on here. Come on, let's see what happens. Um, Especially on like Wednesday night this week before the session and like Thursday afternoon leading in, like as I'm doing my prep for the session, I'm sitting like, oh, I really want to, I really want to let people know what happened. but leaving that for the players to unload and share with each other created some great moments, and then also brought in our Warlock's patron um, into essentially gambling for the Warlock's patron is a dealer. He's a Pact of the Deck Warlock, and the remainder of the group ended up gambling for his soul, essentially. Um, Spoke of it in What's Went Well. Building one two-shot arc in a long-term campaign was challenging, but building two of them wasn't any easier. Um, I like building big, epic scale things, like telling a big story. Even the dungeon the Keystone Archive dungeon was itself if you had gone with six people in there, it would have taken a heck of a lot longer. There wasn't much combat in it. It was a lot of like mental or it challenged the minds of the characters. But scaling content down to two sessions is in and of itself an art. I would say, but there's a quote about something about writing a letter, and it was, "I'm sorry for such a long letter, but I only had time to write a long letter." Like condensing things down to short, meaningful things is in and of itself a challenge. Now I'm gonna go. All in all, I would say I would definitely do it again. I don't know if I'll do it again with this group, um, or if going something like a maybe a 4-2 split or a 1-5, like a much smaller split or a different split to see how it works. Depending on where this adventure takes us, it's a little bit of a, I don't want to say it's linear. They have like it's more of a structured sandbox. There's lots of places to go, and the order that they go to them and the order they deal with them and how they deal with them is up to them. But there are certain places that they have to go. Now, the two quests. One of the things I sort of started to think about as I was leading into my prep on, even as I was putting together my notes for this recap, was could could these quests, could these little mini arcs have just been run tagged onto the end of each other? Like, is it really something that needed to be done now for both of them? So the one quest that went ended up with, it was Team Desir. Desir is our ranger, Dozeer. It ended up being Desir, Zed, and Rohan. So the initials even spelled his name. He received a sending message from his father on the Rock of Brawl in Spelljammer lore about an urgent family emergency. Now, that I could say would be something that would need to be dealt with rather quickly. In the end, his mom had been taken hostage by the mutinous captain of their Spelljammer vessel, the red haired Clogger. And he essentially used the kidnap of his mother and his dad calling him in as a way to try to bring our Ranger Desir back to Brawl and an attempt to steal the legendary weapon that he had. So, that one definitely is a very quick pace one. The second one, it was the second group was tasked with retrieving clues and information on the location of the five major quest items or five major lore items that they needed to they're going to need to go out and get in chapter 3 of the full campaign. At this point, the the collection of these items is not necessarily in, like, there are forces working against them, but they haven't necessarily directly identified themselves. They've just beaten a major threat in a Draco Lich that assaulted the city. They've so for in their mind they've sort of beaten the big bad for the first little bit, and then they know there's another big bad, an archdevil looming somewhere in the distance, but they don't know where and what her endgame is. So creating it as playing it as as two split party mini groups was kind of a forced hand by me as the DM, but the players sort of indicated that they were up for it. They were interested in it. It was something that they wanted to do. And that was where and why I pushed it that way. Yeah. The the shared legends aspect of it, there's like these little two session mini arcs with a group of three people. I was able to cover a lot of ground with them. The campaign itself is steeped in like gloom and memory loss and grief, and along like the warlock, along with dying and being reincarnated as an orc, also was forced to lose the memory of his marriage to his wife, unknown to the other group. Um, the mazes and the mind traps in the archive, as they were searching for memories and clues, he ended up like the with the way the dice fell, he ended up, I think, at one point curled up in the fetal position in a corner of a dark room, feeling like things are chasing him through the shadows. In in the larger group with six people, there may have been somebody with a spell that could remove those conditions, those things. So smaller groups, I've definitely come to a realization that smaller groups, they have to be more tactical. They have to be more all on the same page in order to hold themselves together. Like it was very easy for them to blow all their spell slots. It was very easy for they didn't have every buff. Like if it was the whole group of six, that player, there was definitely somebody with a revivify left, or a spell slot left for revivify, that the human warlock doesn't become an orc warlock. So all these things, it was I had fun with both, and then the reunion episode, like gambling with having them gamble playing blackjack with the warlock's patron for his soul, followed by probably one of the funniest role play bits between two of the player characters that I've ever experienced. Like the time apart, like that was to say absence makes the heart grow fonder, like those like cliche sayings, but it definitely brought them way closer together coming back. And realistically, with some of the things and some of the arcs that I know that they're going to be experiencing, and have to delve into, player characters are their characters are going to need that bond. They're going to need those things to lean on each other, um, in the coming weeks and months, and I'm super looking forward to it. Um, Thanks for listening. I am Mike, the GM of Shared Legends. If you can give me a subscribe or a follow, really appreciate it. And I look forward to coming here. I'll be back again, hopefully early next week, with maybe a recap from this Thursday session or a number of other topics that I really want to delve into. I'm Mike, GM of Shared Legends again. Have a